right, we've got Movie Spotlight, our Friday segment. We're going to highlight two films for you to look forward to over the weekend. Let me welcome our two wonderful movie critics here in the studio, Jason Bechervaise and Darcy Paquet. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Hello. Hello.
Hi. Good to see you.
Feels like a first time in a long time for some reason. It's Chuseok coming up very shortly, one of the biggest holidays. Everyone knows that here in Korea. So we're going to talk about this major release. It's called Monstrum Movie, starring Kim Young-min and Lee Hae-ri. Jason, can you start us off and tell us more, please?
Yeah, it's going to be a busy Chuseok this year at the multiplexes with a number of local releases competing to pull in the families over the holiday. There's three new releases next week, big Korean films. And this is kind of the first of the Chuseok films, and it's directed by Ha Jung-ho, who made Countdown a few years ago. Traditionally, period films tend to perform well during this Chuseok season. The Masquerade is a good example. So it's no surprise we have a period film on release, and it's called Monstrum, like you say, but it's also a monster movie, which is apparently based on historical events recorded in the Joseon dynasty. Set in the 1500s, Jeongjong, played by Park Hyu-sun, has become the new king, but it's not long before those who put him in there want to oust him. They begin circulating a rumor that a beast is lurking around, devouring everything and anything in its path as they seek to undermine his authority, sending the nation in turmoil. And the king turns to a trusted general, played by Kim Young-min, to investigate.
Okay, so it sounds a little bit different from what we usually expect with these so-called historical or period films, palace intrigue, or some elements of some tawdriness going on, maybe, perhaps. Or do you think this is much of the same?
I mean, imagine a very conventional, Korean palace drama with intrigue, and it's very easy to tell the good guys from the bad guys, and then they're doing their intrigue, and all of a sudden, this container-sized angry kitten drops down into the middle of it and starts tearing people apart and smashing walls. So it's different in the sense that it takes two completely unexpected elements and puts them together. Aside from that, I don't think it's trying much that's very new.
Okay. Jason, it's we think of Alien, Jaws, The Meg, these kind of big monstrous type of things. Korean monster films, how would you say they compare to the Hollywood standards?
Well, there's a mixed bag. Of course, you've got the most famous example, Bong Joon-ho's 2006 box office smash hit, The Host, or Gamel. And there's been a few others. Chow was released a few years later, and that traveled overseas about, I think it was a killer pig. And we have Sector 7, about a creature on an oil rig. That was a critical and commercial flop. It was terrible. And so there are a few. I mean, because of the CGI, constraints and whatnot. Although the CGI effects houses here have become pretty advanced, but nonetheless you don't see all that many monster films here in Korea, but there are a few, like I said. I mean, this film, like Darcy said, essentially you have the palace intrigue. It's a typical kind of period film combined with this monster movie, but the monster side of it is so generic. I mean, it follows all the rules. No one believes there's a monster lurking around, and then it appears at the halfway point and then causes absolute havoc, and then you have this climatic sequence at the end, and so it just doesn't really deliver anything new, except that it's a monster movie set in the 1500s Korea.
Okay, so I don't hear a lot of super enthusiasm, but that being said, Darcy, you can give us your thoughts on the film, but also, regardless of what you think about it, do you think it's going to do well in the box office?
Well, it is going to have a fair amount of competition. It opened at #1 this week, and it'll have the week more or less to itself before these three, bigger Korean releases next week. But yeah, I don't think it's the kind of film that will get people too excited. One thing personally that I felt a bit disappointed about was that the monster itself doesn't get characterized very much. And I think the best monster movie is you can sense kind of a personality behind the monster. And, in this one we get a backstory to a certain extent, but there's no real...
It just runs around. That's all it does. Okay. And the thing is, if it'd been an R-rated movie and been really gory, it might be kind of fun. but it's not. And
case.
so it's like
Okay.
it's partly kind of entertaining, but it can't really be especially entertaining because they have to worry about the certificate, and so
Right.
it's not too gory. It would have been a lot more fun if it been an R-rated movie.
Hopefully you guys will have some more positive thoughts on this second film that you've selected for us. It won the top prize at the Busan International Film Festival last year. Debut director, the performance of the lead actress Chun Bin garnering a lot of praise. Jason, so what kind of movie is this movie? After My Death or 죄 많은 소녀?
Yeah, it's quite a mysterious film. The incident that sets off the story is that a high school student, she disappears on her way home after going to a concert with a couple of classmates. They find some of her things by a river where there's a bridge, and it's just assumed that she's committed suicide. The police and the school start investigating, and students start talking among themselves, and there are whispers and rumors, and that another girl named Youngie may have dared her to actually kill herself. And rumors spread quickly, and the situation gets very tense, but we're not really sure the reasons behind her apparent suicide.
Okay, so we say it won the top prize at the Busan Film Festival, Darcy. It's obviously, apparently, not an controversial decision. The jury apparently only took 5 minutes to agree this was the top film.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
So what do you think makes it stand out?
I think the thing that really kind of sticks with you is the emotional intensity of the film. And, so the first 10 minutes are heartbreaking enough. And, the mother of the girl comes into the school, and it really pulls you in from the beginning, but then things just get more and more intense as you go along. And I think it's rare for a film to get that kind of intensity. It's a sign that the director is very talented. This is his first film, but clearly he knows what you need to do in order to make a story very dramatic. And then also the strength of its performances, including the main actress, including also the veteran actress, So Young-hwa, who plays the mother. The other thing I was sort of impressed by is the fact that it captures so well the social dynamics at this high school. And, which is a bit surprising because the director's a man and he wrote the screenplay himself.
Okay.
And yet he seems to have a very good feel for this kind of energy that,
Right.
In this girl's high school.
So, Jason, the actress Chun Bin, praised for her performance. In your view, from relative obscurity, you think this is a breakout performance for her?
Oh yeah, absolutely. She's fantastic in this film, and the intensity of her performance is something else. And some of the scenes she's in, there is, I don't want to give too much away, but there's no dialogue because she can't speak, and it's just gripping, and she's able to deliver a performance that is especially challenging. A few years ago, Chun-ri delivered a very, very strong performance in Hangongju, and that was kind of a breakout performance. So she'd been in films before. She was in Bong Joon-ho's Mother, but her performance in Hangongju kind of she won a number of awards. And as a result, she was able to get bigger roles in bigger films. And I think we'll see the same here. She could well be nominated for the kind of New Actress Award. And she can go on and take much bigger roles. She's certainly very, very talented.
Pretty convincing for, according to the notes, a 29-year-old to pull off the role as a high school student.
I was so surprised when I saw that.
Yeah, so was I. I didn't even know until I was reading through some notes, and she's able to put it off.
All right. Well, Darcy, I guess on a more serious note, I think if you follow Korean societal issues, you know that teen suicide's a very big problem here. How would you say the film handles it without maybe getting too preachy, but or at the same time being insensitive towards it?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that the film shows quite well is that there's not always one really clearly defined reason that someone might decide to attempt suicide. And so the backdrop to every story is usually quite complicated. On the other hand, it's such an emotional issue that I think people's instinctive reaction is to quickly assign blame to someone or to something. And, you know, that's what people do. Yeah. But, I mean, that urge to assign blame can be a problem. And at the same time, you know, especially in this situation where this girl who disappeared, she, you know, had interactions with a lot of other people, some of them somewhat tense. And so people who felt some sense of guilt or shared responsibility are not very likely to talk about it. Right, you know, they keep that inside. And so it's really hard to get to the truth of a situation like that. And so it's a complicated situation which is hard to understand, and yet our instinct is to very quickly kind of assign the blame on one person. And so that dynamic is what this film captures quite well.
Bottom line, both of you like this film. I guess the final question for you, Jason, is that the fact that it's an independent film, and independent films have had a bit of a difficult go of it in this season. Do you think that this, though, would be something that could break out to the mainstream audience?
I hope so. It has been a tough year, like you said. I totally agree with Darcy. I think the fact that the causation in this film is ambiguous is one of its key strengths. Suicide's been dealt with in Korean films before, but it'll often deal with social issues, and it's very clear what led to the death of, or the suicide of, or the attempted suicide of the character. And I think audiences will really get behind this film. The problem is that for independent films not distributed by the major studios, a lack of screens makes it very, very difficult for films to break out. And there's been a few films that are very good independent films that were released this year, but have struggled to find an audience. Behind the Dark Knight is a good example of that.
Well, I guess according to you guys, though, hopefully it does do well. We're going to have to leave it there. I hope everyone enjoys that over their Chuseok holidays. Darcy, Jason, as always, thank you very much. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, you too.
You too. Bye-bye.